Good afternoon / morning / evening / wherever the hell you are in the world. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. This is Recruiting EQ episode 57. Maybe you're watching this online. Maybe you're listening to it as a podcast. We love you either way. Please subscribe to all our things.
No bias.
Thank you for being here. Yeah, no bias. Episode 57. All AI recruiting agents have arrived. Who are they really? I like the who are they really as though they have like names and social insurance numbers. With us today is David Paffenholz of Juicebox, co-founder and CEO of Juicebox. Thanks for being here, David.
Thanks for having me.
And let's do intros around the room here before we dive into everything. Shall we go around the room and introduce ourselves?
Go on then. Go on.
Let's do
Sergey,
it.
go for it.
Yeah, I'll get going. So my name is Sergey. I've been in tech recruiting going on, I think, 12 years now. So quite a long time. Split my time between working in recruiting agencies, working as a consultant, and also working in-house in mostly tech startups. That's sort of been the majority of my experience. I call myself an AI enthusiast. I've always been interested in technology, and obviously in the last 3 or 4 years, AI has just dominated the conversation. And I love experimenting with new tools and trying different things. And that's kind of how I stumbled upon Juicebox, and excited to be a part of this conversation as well.
Brilliant. So I'll go next. I feel like a sandwich here, so I'm the peanut butter or the jam even. So I'm Julie Robinson, and I am founder of Raymond George Consultancy, and we have adopted Juicebox. So I'm particularly interested in having this conversation today. I'm a big advocate, which is great as far as I'm concerned. And I've had this business for the last 8.5 years. We're rec to rec, and we supply the US, UK, and the Canadian markets. So I'm not necessarily a tech enthusiast or even someone that's been bred in that era. So just love the whole concept journey, where we're going. So that's why I'm particularly interested in having this conversation today.
Thanks, Julie. David, take it away.
Hey, everyone. I'm David. First off, thanks so much for having me on. I'm co-founder of Juicebox. We're an AI recruiting platform. So we help our customers find, assess, and engage talent. We started the business just over 2 years ago and really started scaling it over the past year.
Awesome. Thanks. And for those of you who don't know me by now, I'm Rick Coluccio. I'm SVP at Raymond George Consultancy, and I host this podcast every Wednesday at noon, EST. Well, thank you, David, for being our featured guest. As Julie mentioned, we use Juicebox, the tool, so we are fans. But so we're also kind of accustomed to the regular tool. But there's two things here. You've recently launched AI agents as well, which is a super hot topic, obviously, for all of our clients, be they agencies or in-house recruiters. Some people are terrified, some people are thrilled. A lot of probably wild speculations, sci-fi style, like Skynet, Terminator 2 sort of fears about AI. I'm super excited that you're here to talk about this and maybe, explain and debunk a little bit around AI agents, how they fit into the picture. But before we do that, for those who are not super familiar with Juicebox, you've sort of set the table a little bit. I think it'd be good to start with just sort of like a description of, like what is Juicebox and why would people use it maybe internally, like in-house TAs or recruiting agencies as a recruiting tool, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little breakdown.
For sure. So you can think of Juicebox as doing 3 things. First, it'll help you find the perfect candidate. So we have a global data set of over 800 million profiles. We use over 30 different data sources to aggregate that data, and we let you search through those profiles using natural language. And so as an example, you could say, I'm looking for a tax manager in New York City, 4 years of experience working at a startup and at a large company, and Juicebox will suggest some candidates for you. Second, we'll help you engage them. So we'll provide you with contact information and let you run email sequences or other ways of reaching out. And finally, we'll manage that contact data for you. And so you can track your contacts, see who's already in your pipeline, etc., all in Juicebox. The kind of core underlying piece of that is that the entire platform is built on generative AI. So both in terms of how you search, how we summarize profiles, our suggested next steps, and more, is all powered by language models.
And can you maybe situate that for people who are not AI enthusiasts? I think Sergey is the biggest AI enthusiast. I'm somewhere in the middle, and Julie probably lower than that in terms of the AI awareness and stuff. The Gen AI being the building block of Juicebox, how is that different from other tools that are out there that do pieces of this, like Zoom Info or Source Whale or LinkedIn Recruiter for that matter? And why is that? Why is that better? You know what I mean? What can people expect different?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest difference, or kind of the way one can tell, is the way that the actual data is stored and structured. It's not immediately obvious to the user, but you can tell as soon as you start doing prompts or searching on top of it. So all of the platforms that existed pre-Gen AI have a very filter-based approach. And so essentially you either write a Boolean or you suggest different filters.
Right.
Can even be a combination of filters. With Juicebox, you can still use the filter approach, but the preferred approach from our users is to just describe in a sentence who you're looking for, and then we'll match based on that natural language description. And so you no longer have to use that same structured approach, but rather we can do kind of that text-based matching instead. And that's kind of the biggest underlying change that powers a lot of the features that come afterwards.
So these text-based prompts, this is sort of a similar idea to how you would prompt ChatGPT, for example.
That's exactly right.
Got it. And first of all, in terms of your journey, how did you start that? Like, why did you create this company? Like, why are you here? I love that you're here, but how did you get to this point in your career? Like, what's your story?
Well done, David. Yeah.
For sure. So my co-founder Ishan and I started the company 2.5 years ago, summer of 2022. This was before ChatGPT launched, and everyone was kind of suddenly very aware of Gen AI. And we started off with kind of the thesis that we could build systems to help discover talent in a more efficient way. That was kind of a broad thesis, and so we narrowed in quite quickly. In the beginning, we were working a lot, in particular, with recruiting agencies. Now we work with both agencies and in-house recruiting teams. And we started building the product. ChatGPT launched and was this huge disruptor, and kind of suddenly changed by like an order of magnitude the difference we'd be able to make. And because we were the early innings of building the product, we kind of switched gears to really build it with language models in mind, because we had the thesis that what we can build is going to be drastically different thanks to large language models like ChatGPT or GPT 3.5 at the time. And at the time, the language models weren't very good. I don't know if you used like the first versions of ChatGPT, but it was kind of like a rough experience. Like some of the responses, you could more easily tell that, this is perhaps not the strongest response, but it showed a lot of promise. And we kind of made that bet that language models are going to get better and better and more usable and more usable. And so that was really the kind of initial starting point of the company and why we applied the language models to the recruiting space.
So, but that's interesting. So you came up with the idea of wanting to have a more efficient tool for candidate sourcing before ChatGPT came out and was very commonly. Were you already thinking of using Gen AI language models? Like, I guess the question here is, what were you trying to be better than? Like, what was the inefficiency you were trying to combat by creating Juicebox?
For sure. So I think overarchingly, and I think to this day, this is true, that the far majority of recruiting search workflows happen on LinkedIn Recruiter. LinkedIn Recruiter is obviously a kind of very well-established, comprehensive platform that a lot of users are very used to using as well. At the same time, we felt there was an opportunity because perhaps it hadn't changed as much in recent times or used some of the kind of latest advancements that were possible in technology. And so that was the underlying concept we had. Now, before Gen AI, it was very hard to think of like, practically, how can we make it clear to the user that this can be a 10x better solution? With Gen AI, that became a lot easier because it's kind of a fundamental shift in how a platform works and became a great opportunity for us to integrate into the platform as well.
Like, is it safe to say, obviously, that there's a difference in using language-based models, right? And using Gen AI for the search capacity over other tools like LinkedIn Recruiter in terms of searching. But is it also safe to say that there's a big difference in that LinkedIn is a network-driven result-based filtering system, meaning that it's your first, second, third level connections that you are searching, and you only get a certain number of out-of-network reach outs. But with Juicebox, you guys have your own database that you're searching, so it's not limited to your network connections. That's another key difference, no?
That's exactly right. Yep. So with Juicebox, you can search through all 800 million profiles on the platform. No limitations with regards to search, and engage them as well. In our case, that engagement is either via email, phone, or you can add LinkedIn steps, where we can help you track the LinkedIn messaging as well.
That's a lot of profiles. Sorry, please go on.
And I'll just interject here in terms of, sort of when we were what's the word, introduced to Juicebox as an option, David, because there's there's not like tons of options, but there are some options. The sales feature for me was the open searching facility, which was not controlled, and not also limited to those that had a specific license. So anyone with any license using Juicebox has access to everyone. Yep. Which I think is a major point difference. And if I was working for Juicebox, which I'm not, but if I was, that would be my USP, because it's like, you know what, this is, I think, fair, uncontrolled, and open for everyone. Really, at a very, I should be on staff here. Actually, maybe we should negotiate my salary. But, it's a less. A very uncontrolled environment, which is actually then open for multiple usage without the massive price tag attached.
Absolutely. And then you had mentioned something to me in our last conversation, David, which I thought was interesting, where 800 million profiles is a lot of profiles. Obviously, it's like an absurd giant number. But that I was talking about, like, do you add profiles? And you were like, actually, we're trying to subtract profiles to get rid of ones that might be bots or whatever. What is that? What is like so the quality is the next phase, right? Of can you elaborate on that a little bit, maybe?
For sure. And I think, if you're in recruiting, you've probably come across this at some point where, like, you find profiles, or might even be in touch with profiles where it's unclear if they're like legitimate, or if the profile is an accurate reflection of who they are. In other cases, there's more like data issues of perhaps duplicate profiles that are out there. And so a lot of the work we do now is kind of cleaning that up as well. It's funny because the AI-based search is actually more likely to help. Like, if there is duplicate profiles, they're very likely to appear next to each other because of the way that the search works, which is not the case with non-AI search. And so we've put some work into that as well to kind of narrow down that talent pool, make sure the profiles you do find are really high quality, which I think ultimately leads to a better experience as well.
Nice. Well, so, and Sergey, thank you for introducing us all to Juicebox, first of all, and for obviously getting us introduced to David and all that. But I'd love to throw to you for a moment, because you have been the Juicebox guy at Raymond George. You've been using it as a tool, and I'd love if you could just even talk a little bit about how that experience has been, or like how you've worked it into your workflow, what the benefits been like, and maybe get on that train.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think primarily I've been doing recruiting for a long time, and not always sort of blessed with the budget in my roles to have a LinkedIn recruiter license. Actually, more often than not, I wouldn't have one. So I was very used to doing the scrappy search and sourcing on just like a regular LinkedIn account, or like a Sales Navigator or Recruiter Lite or whatnot. So when I first sort of, saw Juicebox and kind of trialed it, I mean, first of all, the natural language search versus like the Boolean filter type search, it's like one of those magic experiences, right? Like when you do it, it's just like, whoa, like if you've never experienced it, it's like something it just opens up your mind to like different possibilities. I thought I spent most of my time in tech recruiting with like software engineers. So just the fact that there were aggregate, different sources of data, right? Like you have GitHub and Stack Overflow and LinkedIn and a bunch of other, sources of data in one place, in one profile. So you can just, kind of quickly go through them. That was incredible. The filters, I mean, the filters were just something that, you know, it's like if you're a recruiter, like you always wish like, hey, like why can't I just search by like funding rounds, like, you know, stages of companies? Why can't I look at the average tenure? Like it's so important for people, right? Like how much do people switch jobs? Like, there were just so many things where as I was using it, I was like, these guys really knew the recruit, like they understood the recruiters' pain points, you know, so they clearly built that from a place of understanding of the workflows and how recruiters use it. I mean, you have some crazy filters on there. Even like you can even filter by like D1 athletes, which is very smart because there's a lot of companies that want sort of that kind of background, or, you know, for sales jobs, right? Competitiveness and, you know, and all those types of things. So it was just great. And then on top of that, you layer the fact that you can not only find, but you can also then, you know, engage and, you know, get the contact information, emails and phone numbers, which there are tools for that. But like from my experience, like, you know, Juicebox ranks really high in the accuracy of getting good email addresses, good phone numbers, right? So it was just a no-brainer, honestly, for me. Like when I saw it all in one place, in one package, it's been great. So I think it's great in terms of how I use it. Definitely use it with a new search. You know, whenever I'm going into a new search, it's just a quick and easy way to just get up and running. You know, get your first list of candidates identified, and the insights are great as well. Like, I mean, that's I would say on par with LinkedIn Recruiter, at least in terms of like giving you an idea of what the market looks like in broader terms. And then I also use it to engage, you know, to get the emails and phone numbers. And I'm a bit of an old school recruiter. I still call people. I still call and do these things. And
it's back in style again, sir.
New school recruiter, certainly that is. It's like, it's like as of today.
It's come back.
It's in vogue. Yeah. That's how we used to do it in agency back in the day. So it worked then, and I think it works now. Cut through the noise. So, and I found that the numbers were actually quite accurate, and also the emails. And, you know, my open rates would, like for emails, would be in the 80s, you know, percentile, which is really good. I mean, I've used like some top shelf tools in the past, like Gem and others, and you know, that's on par in terms of the accuracy and the performance. I think the biggest thing for me was also the fact that it was clear that it's a startup, you know, like, and just how fast it was moving. And, you know, I mean, I was getting emails with updates to the product, like almost on a weekly basis. And that to me,
that's cool,
is even more important of where you start. It's how fast is it improving, right? So it was pretty clear that these guys are going to be disruptive. So yeah, there's a lot still, you know, there's a lot still, I think, to be improved. I'm sure David will, you know, you guys know that, and there's lots of opportunities out there. But as far as I've seen, you know, in the landscape of AI tools, like I did test out quite a few. This one to me was the best, you know, in terms of user experience and actual functionality. So yeah.
Well, there you go.
Big endorsement.
Job, yeah, you guys did a good job.
Thanks so much. You should join the team.
Exactly. Yeah, we're gonna side hustle for Sergey. But so the interesting thing there, David, is were you guys setting out? You said efficiency originally. Were you intentionally setting out to have a tool that replaced multiple tools? Because right now I feel like there's a whole world of engagement tools. There's some sourcing tools, but a lot of people just use LinkedIn Recruiter, as far as I know. But the engagement tools, you've got, you know, Zoom Info, you've got Source Whale, there's a lot of different ones that either do sequencing or provide contact information or combinations of both. We used a tool called Interview at some point too, which was engagement through video. But I mean, like through the Juicebox tool, you're kind of combining the two and replacing a couple of expensive tools with something that's rather cost effective. Was that the point of the business model at the beginning, or did that just happen naturally, or how did that evolve?
Yeah, it was an intentional choice. I think in kind of technology overall, we've gone through these kind of waves of for a few years, a lot of kind of products became more and more specialized but separate. And so not just in recruiting, but even in other domains as well, you know, suddenly there was like we need like 10 tools to solve this workflow, and we have to kind of hop from tool to tool to tool. And each tool individually is very good at the specific thing that it did. But from a user perspective, it was maybe actually not the best user experience because you constantly had to be switching between different things, exporting data, uploading, etc. And I think the same was the case in recruiting. Like suddenly there's like all these specialized contact info tools, outreach tools, sourcing tools, insight tools, etc. And it makes the workflow a little bit harder, even if every individual tool is really good. And so our hypothesis was, hey, we can not only make the actual processes more efficient using AI, but thanks to us using AI to help develop the software, it also becomes easier to build more software. And so for us, that meant being able to kind of build that full tech stack and vertically integrate that way too. And so that was kind of part of the reason, and it continues to be a reason we will add more features that make it a more comprehensive tool that way too.
Yeah, awesome. The comment that came in here, and I think it maybe merits some breaking down and explaining. But so the comment that came in here was, thank you for all your effort in hosting, Rick. You're welcome. And then, hi, Dave. Thank you for the info. It's very encouraging. So in terms of how Juicebox supports, right? The question here is, assuming Juicebox is fully integrated with LinkedIn and Indeed. I don't know exactly what that means, but I was going to ask about integration to ATS. Maybe we can parse out how that works. And the second part of this question was to see how Juicebox supports BD as well.
For sure. So first on the integration side, so we integrate with over 40 different ATSs and CRMs. So you can easily sync candidates with your ATS. And then in terms of LinkedIn and Indeed, so we have profile data from over 30 different data sources. That'll include a lot of kind of overlap profiles with the data sources mentioned there too. I'd say the best way there is to just kind of test it out and see if the profiles are going in the right direction for what you're looking for. Regarding business development, another popular use case, I'd say the biggest kind of enablement we have there is that we have not just personal emails, which is what we specialize in on the recruitment side, but also professional emails on the BD side. And so you can use the same outreach sequencing tools and more to do that very kind of focused and targeted BD as well.
So in other words, use it the same way people would use Sales Navigator and not just LinkedIn Recruiter, but sort of qualifying business leads and then reaching out to them that way, which is something we didn't touch on. So glad to have that pointed out. But there's a question here that I think is especially relevant on more the TA side of things, the internal TA side, about job visibility. So it is in Juicebox. This is something I just literally don't know because it's not really our field. Like we're more searching for people in headhunting, right? And it's search. But can you post jobs publicly via Juicebox and get results, or is that not what the tool is for? Like, how does that fit into a TA workflow, Juicebox?
Yep. Yeah. No job posting right now. So we are kind of very much focused on the more targeted outbound sourcing side. That being said, that might be something that comes in the future.
Yep, understood. So this is more like instead of putting up a job posting, you would, put in whatever, like filter through your database to try to get people. This is a good segue, I think, into what you now have released, which is AI agents, which is the sort of crux of our episode today, so that these AI agents can go out and search for you. Can we maybe just start high level and be like, what is an AI agent? What does that mean? And what does it mean for Juicebox?
Yeah. So AI agents, a kind of big buzzword recently.
Yeah.
I think what it actually means, or the way I think about AI agents, is AI agents are really good automations that are smart enough to take feedback into account. And so let's say a basic automation is an email sequence where, it sends a follow-up after a couple of days and stops the email if there's no response. I would not call that an agent because it's pretty straightforward. Like it has a very clearly defined set of rules.
Yep.
An AI agent, on the other hand, is able to take your instructions or feedback, learn from those, and then change what it actually does. And so in the recruiting case, or in Juicebox's case, what our AI agent does is it takes you describe a search. So for example, say engineers in San Francisco, and it'll then show you profiles and ask for your feedback. And so that feedback is provided in a similar interface to, say, a ChatGPT, where you can give a thumbs up, thumbs down, write out that feedback, and it'll adjust its search based on that. And so I'd say that's kind of the key part of agents in general, is they're able to take into account feedback, reflect on that feedback, and then change what they're doing. And that's probably true for most domains in which AI agents are applied. The reason these are really exciting is because it allows software to go one step further. And so we used to be constrained by having to have really clearly defined workflows or ask the user to set something up. Now AI agents are much more flexible, and they can make suggestions. They can take that feedback into account and come to their own conclusions as well. And so as AI agents get better and better, we might even be able to think of them as assistants or even teammates that we can hand off certain tasks to.
Right. So like sourcing, essentially what we're describing is something that is like a virtual, an AI bot kind of thing, that is an assisted AI bot. You tell it what to search for, and it will keep searching for you and sending you profiles. And you can then say, actually, I need these to be more like this or that based on those results. And it will keep sourcing for you kind of ongoing. Is that right?
That's right. So in Juicebox's AI agent case, we source 35 profiles a day for you. They'll come in every day at 9 a.m. And you can start kind of reviewing them. If you have kind of well configured the agent, you have trust in it, you can set it to fully automatic mode. At that point, it'll just be reaching out to them every day. Meanwhile, if you prefer to kind of still review them, you can do that too, add additional feedback, tell it to adjust its search and more, so that you can kind of steer the direction of the agent there too.
But as it stands for Juicebox, this agent is sourcing for you only, and not necessarily doing pre-screening questions or booking calendar, like booking in to meet with you or anything along those lines. This is purely on the sourcing front. Am I correct?
That's right. So we do the initial search and we do the initial engagement. So we'll set up or automatically trigger those initial email sequences up to the point that the candidate responds. And so right now, that's kind of where the Juicebox agent ends. Though that's also exactly the part where we want to go further in the future.
Right. Go for it.
I'm sorry, but the nerd in me, I'm curious about how that works, because say for like autonomous vehicles or things like that, right? Like these AI models, right? These models are trained by humans, right? Like, I mean, to a certain degree, like they get a lot of feedback from humans. So I guess I'm just curious, if you could a little bit more, without maybe getting into too much technical detail, like how are those, like, are those models trained by like basically everybody that's using Juicebox at this time? To what extent is it like I guess, do you see it improving? Like, I know it's been out not that long, but what's that been like for you, like in terms of the improvement? Like, do you see that they're actually improving the results and the feedback? And how, I think you've iterated on it already. I think you've released like a second version or a third version. So if you can talk a little bit about the fine tuning of those models and how effective they are, maybe in certain cases or maybe not so much in others.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think of the training in kind of two main pieces. So the first one is a general kind of learning or training phase, where we basically help train the agent on kind of general best practices, or these are what different recruiting terms mean, or what the user is actually looking for when they describe someone who is not job hoppy or who has high average tenure.
Right.
We are fortunate in that we have a lot of kind of real usage data. We have like millions of profiles that have been shortlisted on the platform, hundreds of thousands of searches that have been run. And so we can use that information in a kind of anonymized way to help improve how the agent thinks about doing an initial search. So that's kind of phase one. And then phase two is specific to the user. And so every user has their own preferences, or actually slightly different definitions of what things mean. That's kind of the most tricky thing to steer the agent on, because there's no like ground source of truth, or like every recruiter might be looking for something slightly different. That being said, that's also something that's really important, because that's part of the value that each recruiter is able to bring to the search, is their perspective on it. And so what the agent does as well is it learns user-specific preferences. And so we take into account what is the specific feedback a user has given it, and how does that change the agent. And so your agent, as you use it more often, becomes smarter and more adjusted to your own preferences as well. And so that's kind of the second phase, and one that I think is particularly important for an agent to actually be effective and used recurringly.
We have progressed, and I say we as in the royal we of people who work in recruitment, through a roller coaster of different tools in the past few years. And people have altered workflow. Some people have gone full in and adopted different workflow immediately, and then realized, oh, this is not working out, multiple times. and I'm thinking specifically on like email sequencing tools. Like we're going to get an email sequencing tool and send like 1,100 emails to everybody until they want to murder us in the night. And we need restraining orders. So that kind of topped out real fast. People started using ChatGPT for content creation to the point where they had like 8 blogs a day of like 2,000 words. And no one can read that much, and you have to read a novel every day for each person out there. It doesn't make sense. So there's this noise factor of tool adoption and whatever. Juicebox seems to have honed in on a couple of things in that workflow. How do you picture currently the AI agent working into workflow? And by that I mean specifically, like, is it, some people outsource their recruitment. It's another big thing, right? Outsourcing to virtual sourcers or whatever. So we have that outsource team and so on. Is this intended to maybe be another alternative to, instead of outsourcing for people to do your sourcing, you could have an AI agent do your sourcing? Or is it not really at the point where an outsourced team is replaced? If that, like, where does it all fit together in your mind in the chain of tools that are out there?
It's a good question. I think we've seen two approaches. One is like the super sourcer approach, where a sourcer manages a team of agents, and that can be like 5 agents running in parallel or 10 agents running in parallel, and able to just source a lot more candidates. And then the other approach is more on the recruiter side, where each recruiter runs, say, 1 or 2 agents for searches they're particularly focused on, and kind of having the workflow in that direction. That's what we've seen so far. I'm sure it'll evolve as well. Julie, maybe you have some thoughts on that as well, of how you would envision working it in a workflow.
Well, yeah, I was also actually going to ask you, sort of like, in terms of like, who is your target market here? So like, is there a individual in the hierarchy, or a type of organization, or a specific bucket of people that you feel that would be the early adopters? Because I think that is, with all of these tools that you've just mentioned, Rick, and we all know and have probably tried and whatever, adoption is the most important thing. And I think that there's, I don't know what the statistics are, but if we went around the houses and talked to, 10 companies and all the people that have been, oh, here's this that's bright and shiny, how many have actually adopted and then continued? I think that the numbers would probably be quite low. I don't know what they are, but my guesses would be quite low. So and if we look at us as a case study, we've probably tried, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, less than 10 probably. But and how many are we still using? Not many.
We're still using Juicebox.
Yeah, we're still using Juicebox, but not because they were bad, but they just, but lots of different things with adoption, right? So there's lots in terms of someone's technical ability, someone's desire to want to do something a bit different, which I think is the most actually important thing. Like, most people don't want to do something which is different, even if they think that they might have a benefit from doing it. They like doing things the way that they've always done them. So I think adoption is really key. So I wondered, from your perspective, I wouldn't say necessarily workflow at the moment, but who's the target market? Who have you already seen adopting and continuously sort of sticking with your tool, which might then give you the sort of like the recipe for more? Yeah, I'm interested in that.
For sure. So I'll kind of talk about the platform as a whole, and then two, specifically the agent. So kind of overall on the Juicebox platform, we started off with a focus on small recruiting teams, be that agency or in-house, like as small as 1 to 2 recruiters. And that was really where we got started, because it was the fastest feedback loop. People could implement things really quickly, see if it works or not. And usually they'd also be pretty ruthless in terms of either they use it or they don't. And they're a small enough recruiting team where there's no time to waste. And so that was where we started. We pretty quickly from there started growing beyond that, both with in-house teams and agencies. Now we work with recruiting teams as large as 70 or 80 people on the team. For the agents specifically, I think we've seen the strongest adoption among agencies. And so really I'm not 100% sure what that is, but my hypothesis is that there's a kind of more direct incentive to use the agents, because they provide that potential speed factor of being able to find the right candidates faster. And there's a real incentive behind that as well, of being able to close the role faster, which might be stronger in an agency environment than an in-house environment. And so that's what we've seen there so far. That being said, sample size is still small. So like we launched the agent 5 weeks ago. We have around 60 customers using the agents now. And there we've seen the strongest adoption among agencies.
I would imagine that it should be agencies, because agencies, how they're making their money is by placing people. So any cost efficiencies that can, or time efficiencies that can be made, which then equals revenue generation, is more important through this, through the recruiting effort, rather than selling cans of beans or whatever we're selling, right? So that's not your primary goal. So I would think time and an alternative too, because one of the things that we did actually, when I'm going down the rabbit hole here, but when we started using Juicebox, what we did do, because the jury was out at that point in terms of like, oh, how good is this? Should we go all in, or should we just sort of like see how this is working? We did do some searches and compared to other tools around, okay, so if we put in this type of search criteria, who do we get? And if we put in Juicebox, if we put in the same sort of search criteria, although channeled in a different type of way, who do we find? So, and I think that, Sergey, you might be able to answer this question in more detail, but I think that the answers and the results were somewhat different, but there were definitely, as you would expect, the same people in the searches, in the search results too. However, there was I think a more broad result because of the tiering mechanism that you have within Juicebox, and that may not be relevant today if a client is looking for a certain type of criteria or whatever, because you want the what could be the perfect match. But as the job goes on and the job potentially is stretched based on criteria, stretching because they can't necessarily find what they're looking for, those sort of second tier, third tier, fourth tier, whatever tier, until they get to a result is actually very important. So anyway, that's my rabbit hole there. But I think that, I don't know, Sergey, whether you would add anything to the search results for the comparison. Would you add any words?
Yeah. I mean, I think the one of the big differences that I found with that early on is that sort of it's easier to get started, it's faster to get started, and because of the natural language and the really good filters, the advanced filters that Juicebox has. But then once you actually get that first batch of results, Juicebox have something that they call autopilot, right? Where you then go and give it criteria to further shortlist the entire pool of talent that it's able to find for you. So I think what that results in then is that you're able to get much greater density, in terms of I'm a numbers guy, so I'll always, like, if I'm looking on LinkedIn, I'll look at like how many profiles do I have to look through in order to get one good profile that I want to reach out to. So sometimes that can be 20, 30, 50, as much as 100 for like really tough searches. On Juicebox with the autopilot, with the additional criteria, you can really sort of condense that and get maybe out of the 10 profiles that you look at, maybe 5 are going to be a match. Now, one thing I have noticed, and real-time feedback, right, as you go further into the search, the density sort of starts to it's less, right, which is, I mean, normal. LinkedIn does that as well, right? Like it tries to I feel like it knows what you're looking for, and then it gives you tries to give you the best results up front, and then it gets more and more scarce. So, but it's definitely a much more dense, at least if you just compare it, the first 200 results that you get, it'll be a lot more dense in that way. So, which is helpful, especially if you're running multiple searches.
Mm-hmm.
Question for you, David. You mentioned before, just on the back of that, and Julie, I'd love your thoughts on this too, right? Because if we're talking about picturing someone who would buy this tool for an agency or for their team in TA, right? And you had mentioned, there's sort of the sourcing super sourcer who can have, and I love that term, by the way. Super sourcer can have 5 agents sourcing for them to get to their sourcing goals, so they can just get higher volume. Let's say you're in a high volume contract staffing environment, you need to have X number of people. So I get that. And then or a recruiter who, let's say, has a couple of agents. working on different searches. Where's the line? Like, what when you have an agent with Juicebox, why do I want two if I'm a recruiter? Should I have one and train it to search for one role, and then should I have a second agent who becomes an expert in a second role? Or like, does the line, if like, this client, it's the same fit, but it looks for more junior candidates and more senior candidates, is that a one agent thing, or would you want to have multiple agents to search for different and become experts at, you know what I mean? Like, where's that line between me wanting to have 2, 3, 5? Like, how do I know how many I need when I'm planning my team?
It's a great question. I'd say like and it kind of relates to one of the limitations of agents as well at the moment. And that limitation is that agents are very good at kind of running towards one specific goal. And so an agent will be good if you tell it, this is the type of candidate I'm looking for, and here's like generally what an indication of a good candidate looks like. Now, and it'll get like kind of more narrow on that goal, and you can give it feedback as it goes towards that goal. Where the agent will struggle is like if midway through you give the feedback, hey, actually, I want you to go in a different direction now. And so if that is suddenly a different goal, then it'll have to kind of unlearn all of the things that it learned previously. And right now it's not so good at that. And so the way I recommend setting them up is kind of having an agent for either every role or every strategy for a role if they are significantly different. So for example, if there's like 2 very different types of profiles that could be a fit for the role, it might make sense to set up 2 different agents to pursue each of them. That then ultimately also kind of can change the number of agents that recruiters or sourcers use per role. I'd say most commonly we've seen like an average of around 2 agents per user, so that there's either 2 roles or like 2 strategies for one high priority role. Though I think as we get better and better with the agents, maybe that'll increase as well, because it just makes sense to invest more time and set up more agents as well.
And I haven't used the agent functionality. Sergey has, I haven't, David. But so let's say that I'm on this search today and I'm looking for X, Y, Z, and I've trained my agent to sort of do a pretty good job of selecting people for me, and I've got it running, and it's and then I fill the job as a recruiting agency person here. So I now want to switch gears because I don't have that particular role again, or that was one incident, and I'm now moving on. So how do I sort of reset, or do I have to then buy a new agent, or allocate? How do I sort of reset this person, Bob? How do I reset Bob to now go and look for something different?
For sure. So the way the agents are structured right now is we at that point we'd recommend creating a new agent. In terms of pricing, like they're all included. It's about like the number of ones you have running in parallel. So you can kind of create a new one if you stop an existing one, and it'll keep some context in terms of the previous roles that you've looked for and your preferences when evaluating candidates. But it will, in terms of like the specific role that it's evaluating for, provide you with a fresh start. And so it won't kind of specifically remember all the reasons that we rejected someone for a software engineering role when we're then starting off with a say a infrastructure engineer role or an accountant role as an example. And so those, in that sense, creating a new agent will reset a lot of its understanding of a particular role.
A follow-up to that, because that's interesting. So let's say we close the job for the software engineer, we close the agent, we now have a sales go-to-market role, we have another agent that we started for that. Another software engineer role pops up. Can I just reactivate the old agent and it retained all the context, assuming it's the same type of role? So I don't have to retrain it on the kind of like the understanding of what I'm looking for. Maybe there's some nuance, but if the core profile remains the same, can I reactivate that agent and it kind of picks up where it left off?
Yes. So we have 2 options for that. One is kind of if it's exactly the same, you can pause it and kind of reactivate it, and it'll keep going exactly the way it was before. And then the other option we have, which we recently added, is recalibrating an agent. And I'd say that's particularly helpful when most of the things remain the same, but there is some specific additional feedback we want to give it. So say for the second role, which is very similar to the first role, however, there's an additional skill that is kind of a must-have for that one. We could use the recalibrate function to add that additional criterion. and then the agent will use that to continue sourcing and find more profiles. And so short answer, yes. Slightly longer answer being either you can keep going with the way it was, or you can recalibrate it to give it more details as well.
So you mentioned earlier, David, that that this is maybe on the horizon, and we did have a question I want to read out from the comments too, which is, do you plan on having avatars? And by that, I think they mean like an actual. I've heard of this. I haven't checked it out yet, but an actual avatar of me or some random person conducting a first level interview. I know of a couple of tools out there that are launching this soon. I have not seen the ones that exist. Is that in the cards for you? How do you feel about that as a direction in general? Where is your mind on that topic?
Yeah, I think it's a super exciting topic. I've gotten to know a few founders and companies in this space as well, and I think there's some really cool things happening there. We will likely not be building that ourselves, but we might provide integrations with some of the platforms in the space, especially as we see more of our customers adopting it. I'd say right now it's still in the pretty early innings. Like, I haven't spoken to many customers who have said that they're actively running AI screens. I've seen a few. I think there is a little bit of still a question as to how candidates will respond to it. And so, especially for, full-time focused roles, especially where compensation is high, I think it's kind of an open question of, will AI interviews work? I think there's a solid chance, but it's, I think, far from certain at that point. And so as we see more customers adopt it, we'll definitely make it easier, though we probably won't be building it ourselves.
It was interesting, actually. I don't know if you remember, Rick, but I think one of our guests a couple of episodes ago talked about having a screening tool, which was he built, and he said that he'd offered this as part of his service to customers, I believe was the case. As you can even have some sort of AI tool do the screening, the initial screening, or me, and a different price point for either one. And most organizations were not going down the automated route, which was actually quite interesting. But maybe that's just time or that audience or whatever. But it's just, I think, interesting to see that whilst we talk about it a lot, we're not necessarily there yet or ready to embrace these options.
Yeah, I think it's also like it's almost like a societal question of like, what are the norms and like, what are we okay with? And I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes more and more common, but at the same time, I think sometimes these things need to like slowly get into our comfort zone.
Well, yeah, and on that topic, and I know what you're talking about, Julie. Actually, now, sorry, I misunderstood at first, but yeah, Michael, who had mentioned that, but we had Dominic on the show earlier, even, who had said that he saw a model that was presented, which was an AI avatar that would screen the candidate and would capture something like 120 data points on that were in a report afterwards. And his thinking was that screening would be fully AI automated. Now, again, he's in a higher volume, probably less high touch environment. Like you were suggesting, David, might be more, for higher salary, higher touch things that may never be the case. But that existential question there is, what's the point of a recruiter? Is the recruiter supposed to capture data points? Is that what they're supposed to do? Or are they building rapport and doing things that only humans can do? Like, there's a line in the sand, right, as to what we think recruiters should be doing. What's their role? What are they for? And I brought this up with you in our last conversation. There's no right or wrong answers to this, but I'm curious where, as someone who's entrenched in this all the time, where do you see that working in terms of workflow, even for the future? Where does an AI agent, based on how AI works, avatar or not, where does that end and the value of a human being begin in recruitment? Like, what's that line look like in your mind?
For sure. So I think there's two things that are, in my opinion, the most important parts of the recruitment function, which is one, managing the actual recruitment process. So, how are we going to go about this role? Is now the right time to go for this role? And then what are the specific steps we have to do to fill the role? And then two, the candidate experience and candidate relationship. And that can be both for the particular role, but also in general for other candidates that we're staying in touch with and building relationships with. Those two things, I don't see AI agents kind of encroaching on, because I think those are like kind of the core things that we have to do as humans in that process. Now, where I do think AI agents will be able to build more efficiency is kind of the individual workflow steps in between. And so be that on the sourcing side, be that potentially on the screening side, we might be able to see a lot of efficiency. And then oftentimes the follow-on question on that is like, oh, does that mean like, AI will replace jobs or like change the way jobs are done? I don't think it will replace jobs. I think it will mean that, one, we consume more recruitment services in general. So like we recruit more actively, we recruit more specifically, we recruit more in depth for more roles. And then two, I think the actual day-to-day work of a recruiter or sourcer will evolve, where maybe that means in the screening case, less time spent on screening, maybe in the sourcing case, it means less time spent on sourcing, or simply being able to do more sourcing in general and more screening in general. And so I think those are some of the ways that I predict it'll evolve.
Do you think that'll change what hiring managers are going to look for in hiring a recruiter if they're not, like, their job is no longer a lot of learning how to grind out X number of cold calls, X number of whatever, and screen X number of candidates? Do you think that changes what a human recruiter, what the value of a human recruiter is?
I think in most cases already today, right, like the reason we choose to work with one recruiter versus another recruiter is around the expertise that the recruiter brings to the table for that given role and the kind of consultative approach they have around it.
Right.
If it's simply a metric of like, can I complete 100 calls a day? That's like probably not why we're choosing one recruiter over another. And I think that'll continue to be the case in the future as well. And the AI agents become a helping factor in that, where we're able to deliver a better output faster rather than a replacement.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of people who have great people skills. I mean, like if I'm a hiring manager hiring recruiters, and our clients are, right, as Rec to Rex, I think that there are a lot of people who have wonderful people skills and who get along very well and would be great at the human element of it. But for whatever reason in their track record or whatever, they don't seem like they have the resilience to overcome lots of rejection and whatever. You know what I mean? To grind out what is necessary on the sales or whatever side. And it almost feels like with AI taking that grunt work off, does it open it up more for those people to have value or even greater value as hires because of their innate people skills and train those up in some way? You know what I mean? Like, does it shift what makes a good recruiter, even human recruiter?
But I think it also shifts where people can spend their time. So where people actually can spend their time and have an impact, which is where we all think that we still have jobs type of things, right? So I think that it will enable us to do more of what we should be doing and to get better at it.
Yeah.
I'm curious, because I have a somewhat controversial, I think, opinion on that. I do think that a recruiter's job will get, at least the way we understand it today, will be pretty much fully automated by AI. And I think what people talk a lot about, building trust, that's an innate human sort of ability. But I always go to like a very simple example. Like when I go and want to drive somewhere, I trust Google Maps completely. Like if it tells me turn right here and I've never been down that street, I'm turning, because I've learned that if no, I know to go this way. I've done that a few times and it's like, oh no, now you're like 10 minutes longer to get there. And I think if you've used even like ChatGPT with like they've added like a memory function, right, where it like over time remembers more context, knows more context about you. I mean, you can forget that you're talking to a machine, right, to an AI, and you can feel like it really knows you. And in some ways, like there are already narrow AIs that understand us maybe even better than we understand ourselves in terms of making recommendations of what we want to see, or like, the types of content or the types of products, with Amazon or others. So I'm curious if you extrapolate that. So there's the concept of like AGI, right? Artificial general intelligence and super intelligence and the singularity and all those types of things. Do you spend any time thinking about that, David, in terms of like,
good question,
take 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and AI, which is the goal for some of these companies that are working on AGI, can do basically any knowledge work as good or better than any human. At that point, you know, what are we talking about? Do you think about that at all, or is that like a big distraction?
It's a fun question. The I think in a way it's a little bit like I feel like thinking about it can only lead to kind of one conclusion, which is that if AGI is truly going to happen, then we probably shouldn't be building software at this point, or like the you know, like at that point we don't need any software, any tooling, or even expertise in jobs, because AGI will be able to do it all better, with maybe specific exceptions where, like, you know, let's say everything shifts to like focus on entertainment or things that are like not AGI created. So and for that reason, and also like I think the difficulty of predicting, you know, will this happen in 3 years? Will it happen in 30 years? Maybe it'll never happen at all. I try not to think about it too much from like a business perspective, in the sense of, you know, we're just trying to build the best business we can and provide the best service to our customers that we can. And I think as long as we keep doing that, the kind of wild card case of suddenly AGI replacing a lot of it will, at least that's like a wild card we can't control. I'm personally skeptical. I don't think it'll happen within the next 10 years at least. And so that gives us plenty of time to build a great product in the meantime.
For sure. I mean, not to just play devil's advocate, but this is also a podcast called Recruiting EQ. So I'll be the antithetical argument to what Sergey is arguing. I actually agree with you, Sergey, insofar as the way that a lot of recruitment is handled right now, I think could absolutely be replaced by AI.
Mhm.
But I actually think that that's a massive failing on the recruitment industry. I think that the opportunity to have something that actually focuses on, you know, emotional connection and isn't too removed from the emotional intelligence quotient of it. I think this is a massive opportunity for us to explore that really openly for once, where it's a bit taboo to talk about that stuff, and actually train people up on it in different ways. And I say that because even if we think about us as being consultants about helping someone through a very big life change, right? It's a life event. You know, there's a sort of like, cognitive science even sort of has proved that basically the parts of the brain and your brain chemistry that are involved in making a decision are much more emotional than they are rational. They come from your emotional state. And this has been proven by people who have had different kinds of brain injuries that attack the emotional centers of the brain. They're incapable of making decisions. They just keep going through data about where to eat lunch. They could spin off for weeks about where they should eat lunch today. So that the emotional center of the brain is usually what makes you make a snap decision. Yes, data is a part of it, but apparently, cognitively, it's a rather small part of why we decide what we're going to decide, particularly in a life event. And yet, recruiting now is a little two-dimensional. Dare I say sometimes one-dimensional, where it's like matching skills and matching resume point, taking data points and so on. So I feel like there's an unexplored potential for recruiters to actually engage with people in a more meaningful way and use their emotional intelligence to be able to help somebody broker a career change that might be a little different than what they expected, even on smaller levels. If they're empowered to sort of be sensitive to that kind of stuff and not feel like it's this hippy dippy thing that's not qualifiable and quantifiable, as I feel like it could be. And
yeah, it's almost like another episode of just about the human versus sort of machine.
Yeah.
Like you said, the emotional side of it, right? Like I've watched too many movies like Her and Ex Machina, and like and I can see that. I can see where you can have, I mean, like my wife uses ChatGPT all the time to talk about, like, we have a newborn, like at home, and you know, she'll ask it questions, and over time, I mean, like, she'll have conversations with it that, like, I'm like, it's like you're talking to a person, to a friend, you know, like it is a little bit spooky, but also I just think, like, emotions, for better or worse, are also tied to language. Like we do respond to certain things based on what we hear. And in that sense, you know, it can mimic, you know, I think it can sort of create emotional responses in people as well. So
for sure, on the one side, but the AI is not having an emotion to contribute or to. That's the thing, and that's the illusion that is perhaps dangerous. You know what I mean?
I think that we're a long way from this, maybe not from a technology perspective, but from any sort of adoption. I mean, you know, just looked at the response and the sort of the conversation that people have just about getting people to do something which is slightly out of their norm on a day-to-day basis is a big hurdle, like a massive hurdle. I just don't know that, yeah, I just don't know when that could possibly happen in my lifetime anyway.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? Let's address this other question that came in. I know we're almost at time here, but if you have a few more minutes, David, this question that came in is interesting, which is talking about, you know, AI on the candidate side, right? What kind of AI challenges come up from candidates leveraging AI to draft resumes, for example, participate in interviews versus AI vetting, yeah, and interviewing. So kind of leveraging AI to sort of hack the system and make themselves more available or whatever. I haven't really seen this, but you see it in the news or whatever, where it's I don't know if it's an irrational fear or not, but they say the danger is the candidate selection gets driven by who has the best AI and maybe not who is the best candidate. So like, is that a risk? Is that on the radar of someone like yourself on the profile quality side, that people who are better at AI are just leveraging it better than who might be the best candidate out there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it is an active thing that we measure and test. We used to just test this internally, and then we recently brought in a third party to do an audit of our systems, particularly focused on AI bias. We publish the results publicly, and it's like a monthly thing. And you know, we passed the audit. But I think it's a good point, like, and it continues to be important, like, to what degree is AI actually making decisions versus to what degree is it recommending? And I think that's particularly important when thinking about like the actual application side. In our case, it's still sourcing. So it's like, you know, one step before that of rather identifying potential candidates to reach out to. Still important from a bias perspective, but perhaps it's even stronger when someone has applied and, like, you know, kind of an AI shifts through the resumes and decides who to review in more depth. And so I think that's where, you know, making sure we have like pretty transparent systems in place and also a good control of what they actually do is actually really essential.
Awesome. Thanks. So yeah, and I guess we are, I suppose then, Julie, to your point, a little bit far away from replacing our entire recruiting team with AI agents and just having one person at the helm of a team of 700 agents and filling all the jobs out there.
I think we've got a few years in this.
Yeah. We're not done yet. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much, David, for being here. This is a fascinating conversation. Would love to have you back anytime as things progress. Also, for anybody who's interested in checking out Juicebox as a tool, we'll provide a link here on this one, or reach out to us, and we're happy to, you know, give our use case and direct you on how to reach out to David and you know, get a demo or purchase the tool.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Very much, all.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you.
You all.